Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve. I've had a wonderful weekend here in New York City, despite the fact, as you know, that this place has been going through some serious political degeneracy over the last several years. It's changed so much since the days of Rudy Giuliani when I was here a lot. It's been overrun by a bunch of insane woke ideologues, as you know. But I wanted to share with you an extraordinary miracle that you'll definitely have to visit if you ever get to the city. One of the most moving experiences that you can have in New York is a visit to the 9/11 Memorial. There are actually two memorials. They're in the very spots where the two towers once stood, the North and South Towers. There today, in the very place of their foundations, are two pools made up of twin waterfalls, surrounded by a list of the names of the victims of the 9/11 attack. We went there Easter morning. Now, keep in mind, I'm Eastern Orthodox, so our Easter isn't until next week. But it was an amazingly moving experience for me because right in proximity of these waterfalls, there's an extraordinary symbol of renewal and restoration. You may not know, but when the Twin Towers stood, before they were even constructed, long before they were constructed in the early 70s, there was a small, modest Greek Orthodox church built at the beginning of the 20th century named St. Nicholas Church. It stood as a witness of Christian orthodoxy in the midst of lower Manhattan's financial district for nearly a century and served as a beacon of life and light, most especially on that fateful day of 9/11. There were reports of Greek Orthodox Christians who escaped the burning towers by running toward the sacred sound of the bells that were ringing from the church, even though no one was inside the church at the time. And thank God for that, because that day would be the last day those bells would be heard. St. Nicholas fell along with the two towers. In fact, St. Nicholas was the only church that was completely destroyed on 9/11. Now, what's so interesting here is that about 9 years later, as they were digging through all the rubble and ruins of the area that surrounded the church, they found the remains of an 18th century ship buried deep below. Now, what's so neat is that St. Nicholas is the patron saint of sailors. Indeed, he's the saint of all who sail by sea. For example, in Russia, a relatively new cathedral that was just built on a naval base is named after St. Nicholas. And it was believed that that find was a sign that they needed to rebuild this church as a symbol of Christ's resurrection, and indeed our resurrection in the renewal of all things. And that's exactly what happened. 20 years later, St. Nicholas Orthodox Church has risen again as the St. Nicholas National Shrine that serves as a symbol of Christ's resurrection from the dead for all to see and experience. And what's so beautiful, what was so particularly moving for me, is that as I encountered the waterfalls that now make up the two spots where the towers once stood, I couldn't help but see the rivers of paradise restored and renewed in Christian baptism. Remember that the most ancient witnesses of early Christianity interpret the ritual baptism as a restoration of the rivers of paradise, where God watered the Garden of Eden, our original and our future home, with the river of life that he promises to restore at the end of all things. And as I looked at the names of all who lost their lives on that fateful day, I realized that their memory is crowned today by this extraordinary chapel that serves as a timeless witness to Christ's resurrection from the dead and the beginning of the transfiguration of all things. The shrine itself is absolutely stunning. It's a beautiful example of archaeofuturist architecture, a perfect blend of the modern and the ancient. And as such, it's a beautiful symbol of the new conservative world that's rising, that's increasingly blending together the technological with the traditional, archaeofuture. And so with all of the absurd nonsense, with all the decrepit wokeness that's infesting a city like New York, it was absolutely beautiful to see this astonishing miracle, this amazing symbol of a new world rising that even now testifies to the renewal of all things.